Hi, folks, and welcome to Film Optimists, where we talk about all things film with a healthy dose of optimism. I am your co-host, Seth Boyd.
And I am Megan Tierney.
And folks, we have a treat. We have not one, but two guests, two other alumni from previously mentioned St. Mary's College in California, two professional actors who are going to come talk to us about a movie that has been mentioned before, but it's just not like the right one to have when we have these two professions on. Welcome, please, Kimiya Shokri and Alejandra Rivas. Welcome to the show.
Thank
Hi,
you. Thank you for
guys.
having us. Hi.
Yes. And so the movie is The Tragedy of Macbeth, the 2021 version directed by Joel Coen. How did you like it?
It was totally like I didn't know it was also on my radar. I didn't
Cool.
know what to expect necessarily because it's one of my favorite Shakespearean tragedies.
Great.
And so I was like very excited to see what they did. And we talked a lot of like the entire time we were watching it, we talked about how what they were going for in terms of production design. We immediately got.
Nice.
We immediately got that it was like, oh, this is a sound stage. This
Right.
is very set. It's a very classic film.
Right.
So I think that like they nailed that for sure.
Fantastic. I'm glad you mentioned the production design because I think it's a really strong element of it. Now, Megan, you have gone on record as a fan of maximalism, at least stylized things in general. How does this land for you? Because it's a very stylized movie, but that style is very minimalist. It's it's black and white. It's a lot of big structures. I think I mentioned this in like my top of last year. It's largely most of it look like an Escher painting or something.
Yes.
So it's a very strong but minimalist aesthetic. So how does that land for your sensibilities?
It was very stunning. I agree with you, Alejandra. Like this is the most play movie that I had ever seen.
Yeah.
Like it kind of almost looked like a recording of a play to me. But very, very set forward and design wise. And I think that it was certainly an homage to like plays that have done it before, but also filmic in some senses. So like that was really cool. I really liked. I loved how minimal it looked. I think it's very like aesthetically pleasing, of course. And it let kind of the dialogue shine, which I think that a lot of Shakespeare adaptations and or just the plays nowadays would try to do to and I think that it was given like very clear reverence in this adaptation, which I was happy to see. And I wish I had like my copy of the play with me of note taking and stuff. I think that would have really helped in watching it, but you almost didn't need it. Like I was so taken by the performances, and I think they were really like shining through basically with the set design included. So I loved it. I thought it was beautiful and really, really fun to explore Shakespeare that way.
Glad to hear it. And folks, we're not going to do too much of a synopsis because let's be frank, you should have read this one by now. And it hasn't really changed that much, but it is the Scottish play, The Tragedy. So we're going to talk about this, assuming you're vaguely familiar with this story. So I hope that works for you. But let's talk about cast. Did anybody surprise you? I was very happy with the whole cast, but I'd love to hear, as professional actors, Kimiya and Alejandra, how did you feel everybody did? And I think I mentioned this before we started recording. Have either of you been in a production of Macbeth before?
We've taught it. We've both
really
taught it.
That's fantastic. Okay.
I taught it to middle schoolers.
Oh, cool.
Wow.
And so by the end of it, I had to co-direct a performance of them doing it. So this is very close to my heart.
That's
And
awesome.
I think Kimiya has taught it as well.
Yeah, so I've taught it to middle school and high schoolers. I actually did some of the scenes from Macbeth on Zoom during the pandemic with high schoolers, and so they would do lay on Macduff, like hold up their like paper swords on Zoom, and it was cool. So for me too, this is a play that's very dear to me. And then both of us have worked at Cal Shakes, and Cal Shakes recently did a production that I was doing student matinees at. And
very cool.
So yeah, it's always interesting to see what each cast brings, and the differences between doing theater and film are vast. So I think we're excited to talk about that too.
Okay, that's perfect. Let's dive into that, because I think the big question over there's a play is, was it worth making a movie? Especially a Shakespeare play, which has been I think all of them have made into mini movies
Yes.
already.
Yeah.
And I think there are some pretty successful famous versions of Macbeth. Throne of Blood is one of my favorites. That's from Kurosawa. It's Macbeth set in feudal Japan, you know. So like there's a lot that's already been done with that. So you know, take it away. What are your thoughts on that?
I think something that we were talking about is just the difference, like as Kimiya was saying, like the difference between film acting and theater acting is so it's not it's different, but it's also very specific. So with Shakespeare, you know, it was meant to be performed and very outwardly expressive. Um, and that's theater. Like you need to project to the like the person in the back
Right.
row of the audience, and so that's what it was meant to do. And so when you take something like Shakespeare and put it in film, and you have film actors who are used to having intimate moments, like you see, especially with like all the monologues and the soliloquies with Macbeth specifically, you're just like, this is a really intimate moment.
Right.
And you see the choices that are being made to make it intimate because you have the cameras right there, the sounds right there. And so when you're so used to hearing it like this monologue being very loud and expressive, and having the difference of like, oh, now it's intimate, now we're seeing like the inner workings of the head, it's just like, oh, like we can tell this is different.
Very cool.
Kimmy, I don't know if you have thoughts. So.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, I think to me, as someone who like teaches the performance of Shakespeare, you know, it really is about that like embodied language. Like the language kind of brings forth this way that we move, the way that we feel, the way we're in relationship to others on stage and in the audience. And when you take that audience element out, it's really interesting. So one thing I did really love was the homage to all these previous productions, different plays, different movies. That was really special and kind of cool Easter eggs to look for in the film. But it is a challenge. And I think, you know, like naming my own bias, like as someone who works with Shakespeare on stage, I think I have a lot of reservations about if the intimate moments work. Does it work for Denzel, who is brilliant, to have this really quiet, subtle moment when the language is begging for him to just explode, right? So that's something that I think is really interesting, and it's a challenge that all film adaptations, I think, have to reckon with.
Right. And I think for me too, as I obviously am not nearly as involved in theater. I enjoy going to plays. I did high school plays, but there's also something that I enjoy about seeing them do something in a movie that you can't do on stage, like that. Or like there's the great scene where Russ is talking to, I can't remember who, and they're not they're both facing each other. And so like his back is to the camera, you know, like obviously you can't do that on stage, you know, but it looks great for this moment, for these conspirators talking about how we're going to go find Malcolm, how we're going to save the day, you know.
I think one of the moments that was most compelling to me in terms of like bridging like the performance aspect of Shakespeare with like the capabilities of film was the final battle between Macbeth and Macduff, where they're constricted, like they are trapped with each other. And you really saw that with how the film presented, like they're on you know, on the castle, they have nowhere else to go other than fighting each other. And then you still had the big expression of like, we are battling like for life and death. And the moment, this is like huge spoiler, but again, you should have just seen the movie. But like the moment where Macbeth reaches for his crown instead of focusing on killing Macduff, I was like, that's a brilliant choice. That's like Shakespearean metaphor, while also like you're showing like they're trapped. That's it. Like this is all that's gonna happen.
That's such a great shot. His head and his crown going flying.
Yes. So that to me, I was like, that's the drama here.
How did you feel about the violence being captured? Because I think Macbeth is maybe known as being one of the more violent ones, maybe next to Titus or something, which and I've seen Macbeth on stage. Actually, I got to see Frances McDormand as Lady Macbeth and as one of the witches on stage. You saw that too, right? Berkeley Rep.
I didn't see it, but I know that she was at Berkeley Rep in 2016.
It was fantastic. It was great. And so she was wonderful. And I don't remember there being much prop blood in that play at all. And there's not really that much blood in this movie, but it's also occasionally shockingly violent, you know, like a kid is thrown into flames and we have a head going flying. How did you feel like that worked in terms of how it would be portrayed on stage and bridging that gap again?
I think for me, at times it was in excess. Like one of the scenes that I thought was most compelling and also most disturbing, and that I have most critique of, is the scene where Macduff's family is murdered. But you know, I think there were also times, so that was one where I was like, I think that might be a little too far. But there were other moments, like I think the scene of killing Duncan was really poignant. I thought they did a great job with that. And it was like interesting to see, you know, when they would wash their hands, like it's so subtle in black and white, but I think even that slight color change is really interesting.
Yeah, and the sound design is great in this movie, but I have to say, going back to plays, I've been to productions that have amazing sound design. It's like that thud that's happening and the contrast of the footsteps and the drops of blood being matched, like that visual. I think you could probably still accomplish that on stage. So if we're keeping score. Megan, you were about to say something a moment ago.
Yeah, I just felt that it was like a lot of the movie, I think especially the sword work and like knife work was very kind of clean, surprisingly. Like everything had sort of a clean choreography to it, which I really liked. I think it had like a Shakespearean finesse, if you will, of like dagger play, stuff like that. So I really like that aspect. That felt more homage to plays in general to me, instead of like, you know, we've seen crazy violence in film nowadays. So it was kind of nice to have like that little more like stylized finesse of this amazing sword work that was like going on. Cause it's such more of a feat to like make it kind of stylized instead of just, you know, like going crazy with prop blood or something like that. So I liked that aspect a lot.
I think a criticism that is particularly tossed around for like superhero movies is like, it's difficult to scale how strong these characters are in comparison to each other. And I really liked, we got a sense that Denzel as Macbeth is really fucking strong. And that scene where he is thinking he is still untouchable, and I'm trying to remember who it is before it's Macduff that he's fighting, and he doesn't even draw a sword for quite a while. He's just knocking the sword away, and he just slaps him in the face, and it knocks the guy down. Like, and that was one of the most badass things I've ever seen. It's great. You know, that's Denzel being awesome, but it's also like, that's, I think, very true to the character who's accomplished this, because we've heard about what an amazing warrior they are at the beginning of the movie. Megan, was Macbeth one of particular interest to you as far as a Shakespeare play prior to this? Was this on your radar?
It was. I remember really enjoying Macbeth as a tragedy as well. And we, you know, every English major or a theater person is required to like take a Shakespeare, not just you know, a couple books. We have a whole class for it, and I think that's like not going to go away. And I understand why. I kind of want to like get into where Shakespeare lands for you guys in terms of like your psyche and art and stuff like that. But yeah, no, it was definitely on my radar. I remember liking, I also like the like supernatural elements of it, just because like that's so fun, and the witch was just incredible. And
wasn't she, I think we should talk about her. Yes, Catherine Hunter, I believe, is the woman's name. Yes. Fantastic. And apparently this is one of the reasons Joel Coen wanted to make this movie, is he's been wanting to work with her for decades. Wow. And she's primarily a stage actor, and
I can see why.
Yes, you know, and Shakespearean as well, studied at the Royal Academy, I believe, and so he was very excited to have a chance to work with her a lot. So how did you two feel about her being all three witches? And I love that shot where there's the two reflections in the pond and the puddle, and it's her. So sorry, I'm talking too much. You two.
Yeah, I think that was one of my favorite stills from the film, was the reflection, and then, you know, where she like comes up, and it was so funny because we were like watching and we were like, oh, that actor was in Harry Potter, that actor was in that.
I said the same thing.
This is big. And I like looked her up, and I saw like all these amazing stills of like character work she has done, and all these like contortionist things. Phenomenal. And I really loved the choice to have her just be this one entity. And then, you know, the callback with the ravens was really cool throughout. And it was interesting that they brought her back as the old man.
Yeah.
There were some like interesting choices with that, but honestly, I thought it was brilliant. It freaked me out, which I think any good Macbeth should. Like,
Agreed.
you should be scared, you should be weirded out, like
Yeah.
witchy vibes all the way. Like, yeah, I was a big fan of how they portrayed her. That was one of my favorite parts of the film.
Yeah, her voice, like just her, like she's contorting her body, but also her voice. And so you fully believe, like, whether like it's just one body that she can split into like two more, or whether it's just like she has these voices in her head, like she's a weird sister, like that's what they call her, like the weird sisters. And then this, I loved the cauldron scene where they just make the water rise up, and like that's the cauldron, that's the type of spell casting she's doing, that's the kind of prophecy she's doing. And like just her commitment to like, this is what it is and you can't ask anything more, like it was just like, I'm freaked out by you.
Yeah.
In like this very silent movie-esque way, but still committing to the like the drama of it, for sure.
I'm glad you mentioned silent movies, because I think we won't talk about this too much, but yeah, certainly he's drawing from German expressionism with just the whole look of this movie, particularly Murnau and Fritz Lang, and like I'm blanking on who directed Cabin of Dr. Calgary, but like look up those stills and you'll find out instantly what we're talking about. It's a great look, and it's also, I think, largely Night of the Hunter is a big reference point for this movie as well. But so yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. He's really drawing from like all of cinema with this. But yeah, Macbeth is scary. I think it should be. Megan, I want to go back to your question about like, where does Shakespeare kind of like, what does he mean to us? Where does he land for us? And Alejandra, would you mind starting there for us?
Sure. I know that like I always had a very difficult time understanding Shakespeare growing up, and so I never really liked it because of it. And I think even we did a production of Twelfth Night at St. Mary's before, and even then I was like, I get it more now. But it wasn't until I had to start like working with the script and working, you know, with the heightened text. I talked a lot about heightened text while we were watching the film, because I'm like, heightened text, like it's very hard to heighten language like this. Like it's very hard to like, how do you express that? And so they always say like, oh, you don't fully understand something until you teach it. And that's really where I kind of fell in love with Shakespeare, was when I had to teach it, because I understood it to an extent at that point. And then when I taught it, and then I saw like my kid, I call them my kids, but they're not my kids. Like when I saw my kids like understand it, I was like, oh my God, I get it too. Like I get why this is beautiful. I get what he's saying. I get what's happening here. And so when you look at the tragedies, when you look at the comedies, you're just like, I mean, Macbeth is where the first knock knock joke came. Like that's the knock knock, who's there. And I'm just like, this is like, we use Shakespeare every day. And it's, so I think like I never really liked it, but as soon as I'm just like, this is embedded into the fabric of what we know as Western drama, like this is just embedded into our canon and embedded into our lives. So it's kind of just like this brilliant thing. And I don't know how I feel about Shakespeare himself. Like, I don't know if I've gotten that deep into it, but like the writing is brilliant. The writing is brilliant, and it's just, they're timeless for a reason. They keep being done for a reason. That's why they're classics, because they can adapt so much to the current time, and we'll know the story that's being told. It's, you know, for Macbeth, it's a power hungry couple. They want power, and then they go kind of mad because they want more and more, and they're never satisfied. And I mean, that's tale as old as time. Yeah.
Thank you. Very cool. Kimiya, would you mind going next?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about this topic for days. Because like as an educator and as someone who works primarily in a Shakespeare organization, you know, we're always asking this question: why are we doing this? Why is it worth doing? And you know, when you're teaching kids who are hearing about Shakespeare for the first time, right? I've worked with kids who are in 8th grade who have never even heard this man's name. Where does he live? I don't know, New York, right? Like they just, it's new. And so finding a reason to make him accessible is one primary goal of mine. I think Shakespeare has oftentimes been seen as a symbol of the elite, right? It's a way of defining and separating us based on class, based on race. So actually, how do we dismantle that and use Shakespeare as a tool to explore these really human themes, these universal themes, and say, hey, this is one man's lens of how we experience these things. And so for me, working with students to kind of find that human core, and then working with young actors, like last semester, I was actually teaching Shakespeare at St. Mary's, co-teaching
cool.
The Acting 3 class, and we focused on Shakespeare. And, you know, I think it's really important to me for young actors of color, especially, to find themselves in these narratives, because oftentimes that is not the case. And so it was really cool to see different productions growing up where the cast featured BIPOC actors as leads. And it's really important to be intentional with that, because just as easily as it can be like a success and a triumph to be able to feature a diverse cast, it can also be a huge downfall if you are practicing harmful casting, right? Or like colorblind casting, where you're not thinking about the implications of what you're seeing on stage. So sorry, that was a lot of
no, not at all.
No, that's right on the money. It's right on the money, because if you constantly see BIPOC folks in villainous roles,
right,
that's not okay. And so it's all about like who in these, because Shakespeare is very archetypal. Like you have, you know, the rulers, you have the comedic relief, you have like the people who are just kind of servants. Like you have to know, what does that mean for casting? What does that mean for the people that you're putting in this role? Is that all we ever see them as, or are they more complex characters? And with archetypes like this, it can get really dicey, but that's when you know, when you really see intentional casting in productions, you're like, that was excellent choice. That was great. That was good.
How'd you feel this movie handled that?
I think like it was okay. It was good. But I think like what Kimiya mentioned, that scene of the killing of the MacDuff family, that was, I was like, it was hard to watch, because you're just like, this is just a killing of a Black family, which is hard. But it was also interesting to see that Macbeth and Macduff were both Black men. So it's just like, all right, like who wins, who dies, like it just gives you something to think about, like what does that mean when the rest of the cast is also predominantly white? Like what does that mean? And you can also say like, oh, it's diverse, but it's like, if you're only seeing Black and white, that's just Black and white as well. So
well said.
Yeah, something that you said, Kimiya, like it's also that we're sadly like just now getting into coloring Shakespeare, if you will, like with the cast and stuff. I think that it is like a newer concept, because you're right that like this is a, you know, white Englishman from England, and like typically casted like all white people, I would assume. So like that we get to explore that in this new era is like kind of a new way to understand Shakespeare as well. So I think it's so nice and like just refreshing to see a new perspective of it, explore it in different realms of where we are now. And it is incredible that it like still does hold up, maybe even in like a, you know, I don't know how much Shakespeare was even thinking about like race relations at the time. I think he was, it's like in there, but like certainly now it just translates so well. So it's a great way to reinterpret basically ancient text to me.
So Megan, with that in mind, where was Shakespeare for you prior to this? Was this did you read a lot in high school? Was it college? Where did you discover, and where do you land for
Yeah,
Shakespeare?
like I said, it was a very much requirement in both high school and college. So that's where I get kind of like torn with it. But I love what you like said too, Alejandra, is like it is just so a part of our psyche. But I think it's kind of like a monopoly, if you will, of our requirements for what English is, what like theater culture is, and stuff like that. So I get a little like apprehensive when something so large kind of can take over like that. But I agree with you, like it's just it is a part of our culture and like a part of our filmic psyche. There's so many like ways that it translates over to. And then in college it was actually like a big important class for me because it helped me to understand and like really think about it from the perspective of production, either theater or film. And I was and a writer too. You're thinking about like these really well done behind the scenes moments where Shakespeare's not necessarily like planning out what is going on or like what exactly these characters are saying, but I feel like there's a lot of room for interpretation for the either reader and or actors to kind of do their own thing and to see it. So always to see it like portrayed is my favorite thing because it's fun to fill in those blanks, I guess. And that's what I thought this movie did extremely well and was fun for me to watch. So reading them and seeing them from that perspective changes it a lot for me and became more of an important lesson to me, especially in college. So I feel grateful to go through it, to have learned it, certainly.
Yeah, I think for me, I realized I had depression when I read Hamlet for the first time when I was like 13. So Shakespeare means a lot to me, like a personal level of, and I still read Shakespeare pretty often. I was very surprised. I think Megan, we didn't take the same course, but I think we both had course for Shakespeare, and I was very excited, rather surprised. Almost no one spoke up in that class, and I was in that class of people who were very smart, very vocal in other classes, and it was very depressing to me to see in this particular group people were still afraid of Shakespeare. And so I really love him, and I like what you were saying to me about how do you make him accessible to a lot of people, because one of the surprising things to me in that class was like, no, he is great, he's a wonderful writer, I'm glad we should study him, but he also wrote some bad plays, in my opinion. They're not all fantastic. I'm not a fan of I think it's a comedy of errors, and some like there's some early bad ones, there's some late bad ones. Is that one of your favorites?
I love a
I might be misremembering, but like there's one or two that I just thought aren't very good, and the professor was saying, and like, or at least they're not Macbeth, they're not Hamlet. And I think that can kind of get lost when you're talking about this guy. Is like, well, they're not all up to the same quality as far as I'm concerned, and that can get daunting to a new reader who's like, am I supposed to get this because this doesn't seem as good as that one? And I just went to help. I was like, no, it's not as good, it's okay. This is not as good as the later ones. They're not all gold.
I think it's good to like, we can still be really critical about
Sure.
Shakespeare, like even though we can acknowledge that the writing is very like heightened and it's poetry in a lot of ways. I think it's also like it's classic in the sense of we can recognize the themes that are relevant from back then and now. Like we're still telling the same stories, but like one of my favorite Shakespeare comedies is Much Ado About Nothing.
Right.
But that play is full of misogyny, like it is full of it. And so even though it's hilarious and you're like, haha, it really is Much Ado About Nothing, but you're like, wow, like does Shakespeare hate women? Like what were the views of, like feminism at the time? Like what like how do you critique something that we perceive as brilliant, and also like it's filled with a lot of stuff that's wrong and that we don't really want to have anything to do with today. So like Kimiya was saying, like working at Cal Shakes, like how do you justify putting on these productions that like are timeless, but also how do you ask the question, all right, well, if we do recognize there is misogyny in this play, how are we going to address it? We're not going to ignore it. We're going to make those active choices. Kimiya, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there has been a lot of work done over decades by different artists, different scholars, predominantly from marginalized communities to try to make this work accessible and relevant to the communities that are performing it, right? And like, that's not to say that when Shakespeare was writing, like, these people weren't there. They were there, you know? And it's just like they were excluded, right? And so how do we actually take these core stories and make them relevant to us based on our own identities and our own positionalities? And, you know, I think that one of the pitfalls is putting Shakespeare on this pedestal, like, Shakespeare is Shakespeare. Like, yes. And there are many writers writing at the same time as he was, talking about these concepts all over the world, right? So how do we actually start incorporating those narratives into the works that we watch, the works that we do? That's also really important to me, is like, how do we recognize the value of studying Shakespeare while also lowering the stakes? Like, this is some great writing, and he is not this deity of literature that I think sometimes he's made out to be.
Mm-hmm. And I think it goes back to, like, when we're including people of color in these narratives now, in terms of when we cast them in these roles, like, how do we make it so they're not just like, oh, we're just including them because they also existed, but how do we make it so, like, they belong in this world? They have belonged in this world forever. How do we make it intentional for them to belong here rather than just being included? Because inclusion and belonging are two very different things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so glad we had you both on for this episode. Thank you for the wisdom. And I apologize, I know we have a little bit of a time crunch here. So any final thoughts on the film before we move on to recommendations?
I'm glad I watched it. Like, I'm glad I watched it. Like, I always want to see a new take on Shakespeare. I always want to see what people are doing next. Like, again, there's a reason they're constantly adapted. These are very meaty roles for a lot of them. Right. And seeing, you know, brilliant film actors take the screen, I just, you know, I as an actor, you think about their choices, you think about the direction, you think about, you know, why did they do that? Like, what was the choice there? Why? And so, like, I mean, I could watch films and plays all day and ask myself those questions. So to do it with Shakespeare, with something that is very theater based, and, you know, being on a podcast about film, it seems like, you know, a fun little, like, ooh, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna talk about? So that was fun to do in the lens of this movie.
Thank you. We're very glad to have both. Kimiya, any or Megan, any final thoughts? Or?
Yeah, I'm just grateful we got to do this. Thank you for inviting us. It's really fun because Ale and I are actors and also directors too. And so we're always looking at, like, the little details, and I love adaptation so much, like, across any genre. I love seeing how it transforms. And so any opportunity to kind of just add another one into the ether of adaptation is really cool. And yeah, I mean, it was really enjoyable to experience this adaptation. And you know, despite the critiques, if you will, not even critiques, but just like the things we noticed, it's always cool to see a different perspective. So and it was also one of the most beautiful MacBeths I've ever seen, like, visually. So that was
the cinematography is
stunning. It was gorgeous. Yeah,
yes,
it was gorgeous.
Absolutely.
I personally agree. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I'm down for more A24 Shakespeare anytime, any day. Like, I'm excited to see it. I agree with you, Kimiya. So beautiful, like, stunning, and just very interesting for me to see that, like, very straightforward play, like, influence in it, which I really liked. And I think that it's just such a stylistic choice, and I'm, like, down for it. I'm here for it now.
Fantastic. Well, you two are welcome back on the podcast whenever. It's been lovely having you. But, not that we're saying goodbye just yet, but let's start with recommendations. Kimiya, would you mind starting us off?
Oh my God.
And if I caught you off guard, I'm very sorry.
I'm so sorry. I know that you guys cover these amazing films, and I'm trying to think of, like, range.
We've also had people recommended TV shows and movies that aren't even out yet. So you can recommend whatever. Somebody recommended a zombie rom-com. I mean, not just somebody, our dear friend Allie recommended it. It's going to be a fun movie. You can say whatever.
Okay. All right. Then I do have a recommendation.
Great.
Please watch What We Do in the Shadows. That is like my new favorite show. It is hilarious. It
fantastic.
Is gorgeous. It makes me live my best vampire dream life. Persian vampire, we love representation. So yes, if you're not watching that show, Taika Waititi is kind of like one of the great minds behind the production, and it's awesome. So that's on Hulu.
Very glad to always happy to talk about What We Do in the Shadows. Fantastic show and film.
So funny.
I'm gonna piggyback on the Taika Waititi train because I've watched the movie What We Do in the Shadows years ago, but I just watched the TV show. I literally watched it in 2 days. I'm like
nice.
all caught up. But on that thread, there's 2 shows I'm gonna recommend, but both have Taika Waititi's involvement. Our Flag Means Death, which is on HBO Max.
Yes.
The
Great
fact
show.
that there is like a Latina, non-binary pirate who throws knives is my dream. So the fact that that's on screen, I'm gonna cry. But also another show, Reservation Dogs, which is also on Hulu. It's, you know, about these kids living on a reservation in America and them trying to make it out to California to escape the life that they have there. And it's funny, but it's also really poignant. And so, you know, just check out that work. It's really great.
Love Reservation Dogs.
It's a
I'm
great
really
show.
impressed with like Taika Waititi's recent voice that he's able to like get through even What We Do in the Shadows a little, and you know, his newer stuff. So good. Jojo Rabbit was like one of my favorite movies to come out recently. So I just love Taika Waititi.
Great recommendations. Thank you both. Megan, do you have one?
I can do a Shakespeare one actually.
Sure,
Yeah,
perfect. We'll both do a Shakespeare one.
I think we've talked about that. So this will be like the literal antithesis, I guess, of this movie. But I do really like Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. I think it looks equally as beautiful, is like as interesting as this one. And I like that it was, I like the take on it, right? It's set in modern day, but it's still the Shakespearean language. You know, performances, I'll have to rewatch it. I don't quite remember I think it was like, you know, 5.
I remember loving John Leguizamo in that movie.
Yeah, yes.
Right, yeah. I remember really liking it, yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
I did not think I would like it. My wife was like, "No, you're going to watch this," and as always, she was correct. It was
Kimiya brought
an
this.
asshole.
Yeah, Kimiya. Sorry to interrupt. Kimiya brought this up last night.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because we were talking. Oh, sorry, Megan. Go ahead, please.
I just remember really liking Mercutio's character.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about what makes a successful Shakespeare adaptation. And one of the things I love about that one, Megan, is the fact that it fully embraces the language, the embodiment. It's big, it's loud. And I think that that's what Shakespeare begs for sometimes. And again, visually stunning. Love Baz Luhrmann's like vision. And yeah, that's like such an awesome recommendation. I love that one.
Oh, I'm glad. Yeah. I remember liking it. I need to rewatch it.
It's really good. Yeah, you should rewatch it, Megan. I already mentioned, but Throne of Blood is mine, Kurosawa's adaptation. I am also kind of partial to a fun setting change for Shakespeare. It doesn't always work, but when it really does, it's really cool. And I think that ties into what you're talking about, Kimiya, about like, how do we get this to other cultures? And Kurosawa just placed it in Japan, you know, and it's all Japanese cast. It's done in Japanese. The language has changed, I think, quite a bit. The characters have changed, but it's the same story. And it's Toshiro Mifune, who I think is one of the most beautiful men to ever live, as the lead, of course. It's really fun, so check that out. And now you are both immensely talented people with multiple great things going on. Kimiya, I know you have to run off soon, so let's start with you. This is your, we don't even have a fucking name for this. We're just gonna call it guest promotion. Go ahead, Kimiya, take it away. we should have a sound cue, but.
Well, I am the development associate at California Shakespeare Theater, as well as a teaching artist there, and we are doing an adaptation of King Lear. Lear by Marcus Gardley, who is an incredible Bay Area playwright. He did Black Odyssey a few years ago at Cal Shakes. And this is going to be set in the Bay Area in the 1960s. There's going to be Black Panthers. It's like going to be incredible. So please come join us for that. I'll be at most of the shows, so you can come say hi. And I'm trying to think what else is going on. There's going to be some cool stuff at St. Mary's where I'm teaching again. They're doing the Caucasian Chalk Circle by Bertolt Brecht in November. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm like deep in education territory right now. So yeah, a lot of beautiful, brilliant theater is going on all around.
Very cool.
That's so exciting. Cal Shakes, for people who don't know, it's located in Walnut Creek, correct?
In Orinda. In Orinda, yes.
Orinda. Oh my goodness. It's
right on the highway.
Right. Okay, perfect. Yes, please.
Beautiful outdoor theater.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Alejandra, what have you got going on?
Yeah, so I work full-time at American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco. I work also in their education department and their actor training programs department. I mostly do administrative work because I love spreadsheets. But I also am a production manager for Z Space, which is also another place in San Francisco. Right now, we're working on The Red Shades, which is going to have its world premiere. It's a trans superhero rock opera. So highly recommend you go. We're going to start rehearsals next month, and we're going to premiere in October. So definitely check that out. And then I also have a side business, a travel agent business. So if you ever want to book your travel, please let me know, araccesstravel.com.
Oh, that's exciting. Both of those things are exciting, but that's really that's extremely exciting.
Travel agent is one of those things that I will occasionally find myself talking to friends about, like, don't you wish that still existed? Then I just, because we're friends on Instagram, saw that you posted, should I do this, in a poll, and I was smashing yes. And I kind of thought you were doing a prank. I didn't know if this was like a character development thing you're working on or something. I didn't know if this was real, but I'm really glad I said yes. And then not that I'm the only reason, then you did it, and I booked a trip for my wife and I to go to New Orleans for you. It was fantastic. It was very efficient. She's going to send you multiple quotes, folks. So it's a great, really fun way to take the stress out of booking your travel and just enjoy the fun stuff, which is looking at the menus of all the delicious places you're going to go to.
That's 100% true. 100% true. You're there to have a seamless vacation. So why not let me, who loves to do spreadsheet and planning things, let me do that work for you.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to have you both on here. I apologize, I'm blanking the name of this, but Kimiya, I got to see the one act play you did. That was you did a reading at St. Mary's, and Alejandra, you were actually acting in it, and it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. I really hope to see another full version of that. It stays with me. I'm getting teary just thinking about it. It was so wonderful, and that was one of those moments I was really glad I went to that school, and then I knew you too, and just. Oh my God, I'm sorry. I'm getting tears. It was so beautiful.
That's so sweet. Thank you so much. I mean,
such a pleasure.
It's so nice to be here, and so great to be in community with fellow artists, fellow lovers of art, right? That's why we do this, and that's why we talk about these things, is because it's how we connect and how we see each other in different lights. So I also hope that play goes somewhere. It was supposed to be produced, and then the pandemic.
Oh man, I'm so sorry.
No,
one day we'll
produce. Yeah, one day. But I'm so grateful to hear that from you. Thank you.
It was truly wonderful. So if you do have the chance to see either of them acting, please take it. They're wonderful writers, wonderful creators. Their art is fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
folks. That's gonna do it for this episode. Thank you for listening. Megan, any last words on Macbeth?
Damn, I was trying to think of a cool.
I was kind of setting up for is this a knife I hold or some line like that. We'll just say bye.
What? Thank you.
Just go see it.
Yeah, go see it. Go check it out.
All right. All right. That's all, folks.
Guys, we were so excited to have Kimiya and Alejandra on. Their love for art is truly inspiring to me, and I've seen it grow from college, where we all met, to now, and it's just so wonderful and heartwarming to see their perspective. We were itching to hear like an actor's perspective, and this is the perfect movie to do that. So we're
Absolutely.
again just so appreciative of them, and yeah, we will have them on again. We're dying to have.
We must, absolutely. With with that in mind, folks, if there's a movie you'd particularly like to hear an actor's perspective on, email us. Or if there's any other movie you'd like to hear us talk about, we have taken requests before. And if you haven't heard that episode, listen to the episode of Drive, where we actually watched a movie we didn't like. But we take requests, we take suggestions, we're open to feedback. You can email us at filmoptimists@gmail.com. We're on Twitter at Film Optimists and Instagram at Film Optimists. Folks, we're also on a few new platforms. So Pocket Cast, Overcast. I believe we are now everywhere you can listen to a podcast. But if we aren't where you like to listen to it, let us know. We'll get there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We're anywhere, and we're
exactly. We're willing to travel for sure. Yes. All right, folks, take care.